Welcome all to the second part of the Pesach Seder series, where we're exploring the meaning and the depth of the Passover Seder, one step at a time. Last week we discussed the first four steps, Kadesh, Urchatz, Karpas, Yachatz. Today, Bezrat Hashem, we'll be discussing Maggid. The fifth step, Maggid, perhaps is the most important step. In this step, we say the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, we retell the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is the most important mitzvah of the night. Many learn that all the other mitzvot, like the Matzah and the Maror and the Arba Kosot, are all there to support and to fulfill the mitzvah of the night, which is Vehigadeta Levincha, tell the story over to your children. That's why the Haggadah, although it includes many other steps, besides Maggid, the whole book is called Haggadah, because we're trying to tell a story. Trying to tell a story through Kadesh, through Urchatz, through Karpas, but it's all trying to tell a story to our children tonight. And Maggid, we've come in real time to the Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. And I would like to begin with a few very simple questions on Maggid, which are going to open up the way to explore and understand what is it that we're trying to achieve tonight. Number one, why don't we make a bracha on Maggid? On all the mitzvot of the night, we make a bracha on matzah, on maror. Why is it that we don't say Asher Kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, blessing Hashem for the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim? That's question number one. Question number two, we're making such a big deal out of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. Really, that's a mitzvah that exists every night. Every night we have a mitzvah to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. And the third question is, why is it that later on in Maggid, okay, if you flip a few pages into Maggid, you will see we take a section of psukim from Parashat Kitavo related to the Bikurim that begin with the words Arami Oved Aviv, Vayered Mitzrayma, and we analyze those psukim as the foundation text for Haggadah. And the question is obvious. If you're looking for a text in the Chumash that explores Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim, you would not go to Parashat Kitavo, to Bikurim, where Yetziat Mitzrayim is something which is side, but rather you would go to Parashat Bo, the parasha that tells you all the stories in detail about Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the parasha that we read in Shabbat HaChodesh as a preparation for Pesach. So why is it that in Maggid, the psukim that we analyze are not from the book of Shemot, are not from Exodus, they're from Parashat Kitavo about Bikurim? And these three questions open up the way to understanding that Maggid is not just a text. Maggid is Shevach. Maggid is us telling Hashem, thank you, how amazing and awesome is it that we left Mitzrayim. Maggid is meant to be said, and meant to be read, and meant to be lived with emotion and passion. This is not just a text. This is not just a book, a Sidur, cover from page 10 to page 60. No. This has to be done with feeling, with emotion. This is Shevach. This is Shevach. And therefore, if we have an option between Parashat Bo, which is a story, and Parashat Kitavo, which is in Bikurim, it's thanksgiving. Bikurim, we say thank you to Hashem. We rather use the psukim from Parashat Kitavo, because on Pesach, we're not just trying to tell a story, we're trying to say thank you. We want to do it with passion. We really want to feel the thanksgiving and the gratitude as we read those words. And therefore, Parashat Kitavo, which is Bikurim, which is thanksgiving, is the appropriate parasha to analyze tonight, even more than the original parasha of Yetziat Mitzrayim, which is Parashat Bo. With this, we could answer the second question, which was, what is the difference between the mitzvah that we have a whole year round, which is Chirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, and the mitzvah that we have tonight, Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim? Every night a person has to remember Exodus. Every morning, every night, we have a mitzvah to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim. We do that also in Kiddush and in many other instances. What is the Kiddush of tonight? And by the way, this is a question that they say that the great Reb Chaim of Brisk, every single year at the Seder, would begin the Seder with this question: Ma nishtana? What's the chidush of mitzvah Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim? Then the regular mitzvah of Schirat Yetziat Mitzrayim, and every year he would give a few answers. They're all documented in the various Sfarim and Haggadot Lebet Brisk. Also in the Haggadah of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in the beginning of Maggid, he goes through the various reasons. Fascinating. But I would like to focus on one specific answer. One specific answer. You know what's the chidush? You know what's the difference between zechira of the whole year and what we're doing tonight? Tonight is not just to remember. Tonight is not just to remember something of the past. This is a sipur, this is a story. And this story is not just a story of old, it's a story that's being said as a shevach, as a thanksgiving, with passion, with a conversation with the children. This is a whole different experience. A whole year, every morning and every night, leman tizkor et yom tzedcha meretz Mitzrayim, is to remember briefly what has happened. Tonight, that's not the case. Yes, some poskim say that even briefly, but tonight, the approach that we're taking is that the mitzvah is shevach. The mitzvah is to say it with passion and to relive that experience. And that's so different than the zechira that we do year round. Therefore, it has to be as a sipur. Therefore, it has to be done as a question and answer with the children, etc. And once we establish that Maggid is not just storytelling, but it's reliving with passion, with excitement, the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, we could go back to the first question: why don't we make a beracha on Maggid? And the answer is, we don't make a beracha on a beracha. Birkat HaMazon, we don't say, Asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu levarech Birkat HaMazon. It's a mitzvah midoraita. Well, it doesn't make sense to make a bracha on a bracha. Maggid is a bracha. Maggid is blessing Hashem, thanksgiving to Hashem. It's not just a text, it's not just storytelling, it's done with passion, with excitement. We're saying thank you to Hashem, and for that, it's almost inappropriate to make a bracha. You know, like as if imagine you go over to someone and you tell him, I was told I have to say thank you. B'mitzvotav etzivanu, to tell you thank you. What kind of a thank you is that? What kind of a thank you is it that you're only doing it because v'tzivanu? No, thank you has to come from the heart. Thank you has to come because you're living it, because you're passionate about it. That's a real thank you. Therefore, it would be inappropriate to begin the Seder and say, oh Hashem, you know why we're saying thank you? Because b'mitzvotav etzivanu. No, we're telling Hashem, regardless, we want to tell you thank you. Regardless, we want to say the story as a shevach, as a thanksgiving to you. And that's the number one thing to realize. Tonight, we're doing a shevach and hodaya, a thanksgiving to Hashem through this story. And this is so important that later in the Haggadah we say that not only, and let's build it up again, not only are we remembering, not only are we saying the story, and not only are we saying it with a passion, with excitement as a thanksgiving, but there's one more critical component to Maggid, which is going to be the focus of tonight's class. It has to be an experience as if you're reliving it now, as if it's happening to you. Later, towards the end of Maggid, right before the beracha, we say, Bechol dor vador, chayav adam lirot et atzmo, keilu hu yatsa mitzrayim. In every generation, you have to look at yourself as if you left Mitzrayim. In Pesach, we have to live and we have to act as if we are the ones leaving Mitzrayim. And so many things in the night are there to make us feel that the story is happening to us, whether it's leaning in the 4 cups and in the matzah, whether it's putting on the table nice dishes, and the way we dress. The whole attitude is that it's happening to us. Ve'otanu hotzi misham, as we say in Maggid, it's happening to us right now. And the Maharam Chalava says something fascinating. This is not only a nice chumrah, a nice addition, that when you say the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, when you say this shevach, this thanksgiving, it should be done in a way as if it's happening to you. But that last point is actually halachically critical. Halachically critical. And the Maharam Chalava in Pesachim Daf Kuf Tezayin says, we cannot make a blessing, a bracha, and a miracle that happened to our great grandparents. If you want to say Hallel, like in Chanukah and Purim, okay. But Birkat HaNes, like we do in the bracha Asher Ge'alanu, in the end of Maggid, a Birkat HaNes, a specific bracha and a miracle, says the Maharam Chalava, not everyone agrees to that, but says the Maharam Chalava that only applies to 3 generations. So let's say, Chaz v'Shalom, a person was in a car crash and miraculously he was saved. Every time he goes past that bridge, he makes a bracha. His son makes a bracha. His grandson can make a bracha. More than 3 generations, says the Maharam Chalava, we lose the appreciation, we lose the feeling for this place, for this story. You can no longer make a bracha. Now on Pesach, not only do we say Hallel, like Chanukah and Purim about miracles of old, but rather we make a bracha on the miracle of Yetziat Mitzrayim, the bracha that concludes Maggid. How can we do that? Says the Maram Chalava, you know what? You know how? Because it's not a miracle that happened to our great-grandparents. If it would be a miracle, if Yetziat Mitzrayim would be a miracle that happened to your great-grandparents, you cannot make a bracha on it. The only way how this can be a legitimate bracha, the bracha of Asher Galanu, is because you're saying it as if it's happening to you. It's your own miracle. Yetziat Mitzrayim happened to you. Beautiful. Do the bracha. And therefore, the bracha at the end of Maggid is Baruch Ata Hashem, Asher Galanu v'Ga'al et Avotenu. It should have been the other way around. First, historically, Ga'al et Avotenu, and then comes Galanu. But the answer is no. If the story of Mitzrayim only happened to your great-grandparents, but it didn't happen to you, it's not Galanu, it didn't happen to you, then you cannot make that beracha. The only reason you can make that beracha is because at the end of Maggid, you already reached that point where the miracle is happening to you and you're living it. You're living the Yetziat Mitzrayim in this very same second. Ke'ilu hu yatsa mi Mitzrayim. Not theoretically, not as a nice idea, but practically in the halacha world. That's critical for you to make the final bracha of Maggid. So now we know where we have to get to. Now we know that in Maggid, we have to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim, to say the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. We have to feel the thanksgiving to Hashem. And most importantly, we have to feel that it's happening to us. The Yetziat Mitzrayim is taking place today in my home to me in 2026. And the obvious question is, Rabotai, how? How can I feel, how can I relive a story that happened so many years ago? It's nice in theory, but the moment you tell me this is practical, and according to the Maram Chalava, this has to be real, halachically, in order for the beracha to work. So we have a mission, we have a goal. How do we do that? How do we view ourselves as if we left Mitzrayim if we didn't? Most of us have never been to Mitzrayim. Most of us don't even know what does it mean to be avadim, like our forefathers were in Mitzrayim. So what does it mean to really feel that I'm leaving Mitzrayim tonight in a real way? And be able to understand that, which is the main mitzvah of the night as we begun, we're going to go back to the very first paragraph in Maggid. The very first paragraph in Maggid is Halach Ma'anya. Halach Ma'anya. Some people begin with Bibhiru Yatzanu Mitzrayim, Halach Ma'anya. What does Halach Ma'anya say? So the first line is okay. Halach Ma'anya di'achalu avatana be'ara'ah de Mitzrayim. This is the bread of poverty that our forefathers ate in the land of Mitzrayim. That's fine. The second line is an invite. Kol dechfin yiteh v'yichol, kol detzrich yiteh v'yifsach. We're inviting people to our Seder table. Hello? It's the middle of Maggid. Now you remember to start inviting people to your Seder dinner. You should have done this 3 weeks ago. Who exactly is listening to that invite in the middle of Maggid in your house? And most importantly, what bothers me most about Halach Ma'anya, which is the introduction to Maggid, the first paragraph, is that it kills the whole thing. Halach Ma'anya, the last line, seems to be killing the whole party. Hashata avdin leshana haba'a benechorim. Hashata hacha leshana haba'a be'arad Yisrael. Let's double click on the words Hashata avdin. This year we're slaves, so then how can we say avadim hayinu? Isn't the whole point of the night to feel and to remember and to really, really drive home the point that we're not avadim, we're benechorim. Avadim hayinu, we're going to say soon. Avadim hayinu in the past. And you're telling me hashata avdin, now we're slaves. Avadim hayinu. This seems to be completely contradicting the whole idea, the whole message of the night. And it's not even like this is a random paragraph somewhere in the middle. You might not realize it. This is the very first introductory paragraph to Maggid is Hashata Avdin. This year, now you're slaves. So why are we celebrating? What does it mean? Is it avadim ainu or it's hashatav avdin? And the answer is, the author of the Haggadah wants to tell you, I know what you're thinking. When Maggid begins, and you remember that you learned in the Shiur that it has to be done with passion, with excitement, that you have to see as if it happened to yourself. So then you're going to think to yourself deep down, this is not practical, this is not real. How could I feel as if I'm free if I'm a slave? I'm a slave. At the end of the day, I still have issues at work, I have issues with family, have issues with this guy, have issues with that guy, have an issue with money. So with all those issues, you want me to feel that I'm free? With all those issues, you really want me to relive Yetziat Mitzrayim and tell you, Asher Ge'alanu? No, I'm a Eved. Just 6 hours ago before the Seder, I was dealing with a debt, or I was dealing with a family member that's not well, or 2 hours before the Chag, I got an email about something at work which completely threw me off. I'm an Eved. You really want me to feel Ben Chorin? Therefore comes the Baal Haggadah and tells you, I know, my dear son, I know, Hashata Avdin, I know that's how you feel. I'm not being delusional. I'm not speaking in the air. I know who is our crowd. I know you feel as a Eved. And that's why, by the way, we put in over there, Kol Dichfin, Kol Ditzrich. This is not an invite. You don't invite in the middle of the Seder. This is to recognize that there is needy people, to recognize that there is still problems. We tell the person sitting at the Seder, you think this is not real because there is needy people, because there's hungry people, because you're a slave. We know. We're not coming from a detached, unpractical, unrealistic place, sitting on some ivory tower saying, oh, you should feel like a Ben Chorin. We know the reality. We know there is needy people. We know there's people that need an invite. We know that Hashata Avadin, Hashata Acha, we know that. And with all of that, we tell you, please, trust. Trust the process. Join us for Maggid, and you will become free. I know there is needy people. I know people need an invite. I know people are hungry. I know you yourself are a slave to so many things. Trust us. Trust us that tonight, through the process of Maggid, you could really become free, and the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim can happen to you. It comes from a place of sympathy, a place of understanding. How beautiful is the Halach Ma'anya that's talking to the person sitting in the Seder and telling him, I know what you're thinking, I know what you're feeling, and in your current reality of Dichfin and Ditzrich and Avdin, in that reality, I'm going to pick you up. How powerful. And now, let's get to the how. Exactly, how can we lift ourselves up and become Bnei Chorin? With that, we go to the next paragraph, right? We begin with the Manishtana, with the questions, and then we get to Avadim Ainu. Avadim Ainu, that important paragraph that says we were slaves and now we're not. But then, the Avadim Ainu goes on and says a line, which again seems to be completely out of place. The Avadim Ainu says, Ilu lo hotziya Kadosh Baruch Hu et avotenu mimitzrayim. If Hashem would have not taken us out, hare anu ubanenu ubne banenu meshuabadim ainu leparo b'mitzrayim. If now for HaKadosh Baruch Hu taking us out, we, our children, and our grandchildren would still be avadim to Paro. And you look at yourself and you say, really? Really? Do you really think that in 2026, Am Yisrael would have been avadim to Paro? Paro doesn't even exist anymore. There is no more Paro. Mitzrayim has completely changed. Do you really think we would have been avadim to Paro? What does that even mean? How can we say that with a straight face? Are anu banenu bne banenu if not for Pesach? So some explain that yes, all those changes that you see in the world, that Mitzrayim fell down, and there's no slavery, and then the Greeks, then the Romans, all of that is because of Am Yisrael. So wherever Am Yisrael is, so the social changes are happening as a result of that. But if not for Am Yisrael moving around, Mitzrayim would have still been a superpower, and we would still be avadim. That's one approach. But tonight I would like to take another approach, which I think is the most practical to our conversation here tonight. Mitzrayim is not a place. And that's something you have to change the chip from now. From now, when you see in Maggid Mitzrayim, it's not only a place. Mitzrayim is a state of mind. Mitzrayim is a state of being. Mitzrayim is not only a geographical point in the map. Mitzrayim is a situation when a person is found in Meitzarim, in limitation, like we have in the 3 weeks in the summer, Ben HaMetzarim. So we have those Mitzrayim, those limitations, that narrowness that limits us and makes us feel that we can't do more, that we can't experience life, that we can't experience our Judaism, that we can't move forward because we're stuck. Some people are stuck due to parnasah, some people due to health, some people due to shalom bayit, some people due to emotional or psychological problems, some people due to traumas, to addictions. Only Hashem knows. But every person has Mitzrayim. Every person has limitations. And that's what we say in the Maggid. If not for Pesach, we, our children, and our grandchildren would have been avadim to Paro in Mitzrayim. In which Mitzrayim? In the Middle East? Not necessarily. Mitzrayim could be anywhere. Mitzrayim could be right now, right here. Mitzrayim could be in the comfort of your home, wherever you may be. Mitzrayim is not a place in the map. And if not for Pesach, you would have been conditioned. You would have been conditioned to that Mitzrayim, to that limitation, to that narrowness that bugs you down and limits you. But what happened? Pesach happened. And you know what happened in Pesach? Hashem didn't only take us out from point A to point B in the map. That's the least of the miracle of Pesach, Rabotai. This is the change that I want you to realize in the Seder of Pesach. In the Seder of Pesach, we tell Hashem, thank you for not only taking us out from point A to point B on a map, but from taking us out from the status of an Eved, status of limitation, status of narrowness, and being slave to the circumstances, and you gave us the gift, in the words of the Maharal, in Gvurat Hashem, you gave us the gift of Bnei Chorin Be'etzem. We become free people at the core. We became free people at our core, regardless of our circumstances. And that's such a big gift. Such a big gift humanity has yet to see until Pesach. Humans always thought you are conditioned to your circumstances. And you know what? Many humans still think so. And sometimes you also think so. That your happiness and your freedom and your growth depends on circumstances, on how much you have, on who said this, on where do you live, on your in-laws, on your situation. Comes Pesach and tells you, forget it, you're a Ben Chorin, you're free. You're free to be who you are, to be a Yehudi, to be besimcha, regardless of the circumstances. You're not bound by Mitzrayim, you're not bound by those limitations, you're not bound to be narrow and to be bogged down to Paro. You can be free. Free of what? Of your Mitzrayim. What is your Mitzrayim? Where is your Mitzrayim? Every person has his own Mitzrayim. Every person knows exactly what is his Mitzrayim that's holding him down. And every person knows clearly that if not for Pesach, there would be no chance. If not for Pesach, there's no hope, because we're conditioned to that. We're conditioned to be bogged down by circumstances and feel like there's no way out, and to get exhausted by our problems, by our struggles. Comes Pesach and tells you, you are a Ben Chorin Be'etzem. You're intrinsically free. But if not for Pesach, you're right. Hare'anu ubanenu ubne banenu meshubadim ha'inu leParo b'Mitzrayim. Whether it's the Mitzrayim of your phone, the Mitzrayim of your work, the Mitzrayim of a certain health situation, the Mitzrayim of your emotional difficulties, but you would have been conditioned to Mitzrayim. And now, because of Pesach, you have the gift of Ben Chorin Be'etzem. You have the gift of being free, not dependent on your circumstances. And that's exactly how we could live, as if Yetziat Mitzrayim is happening to us now. We asked in the beginning of the class, and now we're circling back. We asked in the beginning of the class, how could I feel like it's happening to me? I was never in Egypt. I don't even know who Paro is. How can I feel like I'm a slave going free? reframe the word Mitzrayim. And the whole story of Pesach, you will see, is happening to you right now. You have those limitations, you have those boundaries, you have that which holds you down, which right now, tonight in Yetziat Mitzrayim, if you let go, you will be able to become free of them. That's the gift of Pesach. With this, we could continue to our next point, which is a paragraph in the Haggadah that seems to be taking us back all the way to Terach, the father of Abraham. Seems completely out of place. This is a story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, of Exodus. Why are we going back to before Abraham? Mitchila of the Avodah Zarah yu avotenu. That our forefathers were idol worshippers. Why do we have to go so far back? There's an argument in the Gemara between Rav and Shmuel about how should the Haggadah be structured. Everyone agrees, matchil begnut umesayem b'shevach. Everyone agrees the Haggadah has to begin with the sad part and end with the happy part. That's clear. In order for you to appreciate the night and celebrate it, you have to remember the sadness and get to the happy part. The only question is, where does the sad part start and where does the happy part end? So, Shmuel says, Avadim Hayinu. Avadim Hayinu is the beginning of the story. We were slaves to Paro in Egypt, and then we went free. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Rav says, no. You have to go all the way back to Terach, and you have to end Ve'achshav, now. He zooms out completely. The story of Pesach is not Avadim Hayinu to the freedom and the Yetziat Mitzrayim. The story of Pesach is from Terach, the father of Abraham, being an idol worshipper, to Ve'achshav, to now. Why is that? Why is that? And what does it mean? To understand that, we have to analyze another argument between Rav and Shmuel. In Masechet Gittin, Daf Lamed Chet. So in Pesachim, Daf Kuf Tet Zayin, Rav and Shmuel are arguing how to structure the Haggadah. In Gittin, Rav and Shmuel argue something that seems completely unrelated, but Rav Soloveitchik in the Haggadat Masoret HaRav makes the link beautiful. In Gittin, Rav and Shmuel say, what's the halacha if someone disowns his Eved? Not that he frees him specifically with a contract, with a get shichrur, which is a typical case, but he just say, I disown the slave. So a man has a slave, and instead of being a mensch and writing the contract, the get shichrur, where he's letting him go, instead of that, he just said, Ani mafkir, I'm just abandoning this man. The question is, does he have to have now a contract also that says he's free, or just with that hefker, the master lets him out? So Shmuel says, just with the master saying he's off the hook, just with the master saying hefker, with that he's good to go. Rav says, no. He still needs to have his get shichrur. He still needs to be able to have a document that clearly says that he is free. It's not just enough to let go, that he's not a slave anymore. He actually needs a contract detailing that he's free. What are they arguing about in Gittin? What are they arguing about in Pesachim? And what do they have to do with each other? And how does it help us understand Maggid one step deeper? So to understand that, we'll open up a third tab. The words of the Rambam. The Rambam, Maimonides, in Ilchot Chametz Umatzah, where he begins to discuss the mitzvah of Sipur Yetziat Mitzrayim. He says, there is a mitzvah in the night of Pesach to remember the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim and to say the story over. As it says, Zachor et hayom hazeh, remember this day. And then it comes a line that seems completely out of place. K'mo shene'emar, Zachor et yom ha-Shabbat l'kadesho. Says the Rambam, you have to say the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim tonight. And then he compares it to remembering Shabbat. What does Shabbat have to do with Yetziat Mitzrayim? Why is the Rambam, when explaining what Yetziat Mitzrayim is, brings us to the Zachor of Shabbat. Explains the Lubavitcher Rebbe in a fascinating sikha. Based on the words of the Rogatchover, the great genius. Shabbat has two parts. Shabbat has the nose, and Shabbat has the yes. Shabbat has, you're not allowed to drive a car, don't watch TV, don't work, don't do melacha. Shabbat also has the yes. What's the yes of Shabbat? To proactively rest. To proactively express that menucha, which we do through kiddush, through tefillah, through time with the family, through learning. But it's not about the no, it's about the yes. Now, as a side point, maybe we'll expand about it in a different shiur. In many places, many homes, unfortunately, you hear much more the no than the yes. The focus in the house is much more about what not to do than about what we are doing. And that's very detrimental for Shmirat Shabbat. If all that Shabbat is only a day that we don't do, but there's very little about what we do. Shabbat is a lot of no's, but the no's are there to get to the yes. Don't forget that. The no, all the lo ta'aseh, and don't do melacha, and the shamor is there for the zachor, is there in order to have a proactive menucha, which is expressed through that which we do on Shabbat, whether it's kiddush, time with the family, learning, etc. So this is what Shabbat is. Shabbat is no, Shabbat is yes, and the yes has to be louder than the no. And we could prove that from the way the Rambam codifies it in Ilchot Shabbat, but this is beyond the scope of this class. Let's bring it back to Pesach. Pesach also has no and has yes. No is, we're not slaves. No is, we're not avadim to Paro. Yes is, what does it mean for you to be a ben chorin? What does it mean for you to be free and not depend on circumstances? How does it express in your life? So yes, 100%. We have to say the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim, that we're not slaves. But that's not enough. I know you're not a slave, but who are you? Yes. And that is so critical. A slave that gets freed. He knows he's not a slave, but he doesn't know that he is free. He's losing the most important feature of a human, that freedom he's lacking. Because yes, maybe he's no longer a slave to this guy, but he's not aware of what the freedom means to him. Which maybe this is what Rav tells Shmuel in Masechet Gittin. Yes, you were mafkir the Eved. You disowned the Eved. But if you ask the Eved, who are you? He has no idea. You never wrote it to him. You never wrote him a get explaining to him that he is free. It's two steps. The no and the yes are independent. How many times do we go on a vacation? So we're not working, but we're not free. Our mind is still there. We're still stressed. We're not focused on the family. So only not to be in the office or not to be answering emails doesn't make you free yet. There's the no, I'm not in the office, I'm not in the store, but does that mean you're free? Not necessarily. Very often you're not working, but nor are you free. You have to be proactively looking for that freedom, for that menucha, for that bnei chorin. And this is what the Rambam tells us on Pesach. Just like in Shabbat, there is no and there is yes. And the yes has to be louder than the no. So too in Pesach, there is that we're not slaves, but more importantly is, who are you? Yes. That you are a ben chorin. And what does that mean? Sit with your family and discuss that. We're all looking for which midrash, which story about the makot can we tell them. Maybe just as important, if not more, is to sit with your children and tell them, what does it mean for me and for you to be a ben chorin now? What does it mean to be a Yehudi that has simcha, that has confidence, that has a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, regardless of the circumstances? It means one thing for daddy. It means something else for mommy. It means something else for a teenage boy. It means something else for a little girl. It means something else for someone who's in Kolel. Every person, his mitzrayim are different. Hence, his yes means something else. Hence, his ben chorin means something completely different. And that has to be a discussion in Leil Seder. In Leil Seder, we have to discuss what is Ben Chorin for us. How are we Bnei Chorin? Not only how we're not slaves. Beautiful. Now let's go take it back to the argument of Rav and Shmuel, where to begin and end the story of Maggid. So Shmuel says, from Avadim Ayinu, we were slaves and now we're not. Rav says, no. That's only going to tell you what we're not. Avadim Ayinu is going to tell you we were slaves and now we're not. But it doesn't tell me who I am now. Therefore says Rav, beautiful, Mitchila of the Avodah Zarah Avotenu. You know how this whole thing started? Forget about slaves. It started that we didn't have an identity. We didn't have a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And you know how the story ended? Ve'achshav. The story is happening now. Ve'otanu otzi misham. Asher ge'alanu, says Rav. Ve'achshav kervanu hamakom la'avodato. Now HaKadosh Baruch Hu is bringing us close to Him. And you have to bring about that in the Seder. Not only Avadim Ayinu and we're not, but we had no identity, and now we have an identity. Now, ve'achshav, the story of Mitzrayim is finishing this very same second in this house, around the Seder table. We are going to explore ve'achshav. We're going to explore now what is our cherut. How do we express our Ben Chorin? And with this, we could furthermore answer the original question of the class. How can a person get to that he begins Maggid with Hashta Avdin? He ends Maggid with Asher Ge'alanu. This is extremes. He began by saying that he's a slave. And he ends by saying that he himself is free and he feels it and therefore he can make a bracha. You know how? Because the journey of Maggid is about realizing that I have limitations, I have things that bug me down, I have struggles, I have stresses, but they don't define me. That's not who I am. In Pesach, I got the gift of freedom, which does not depend on the circumstances, and I'm going to express that freedom tonight. And therefore, tonight, you have to do both. You have to do what Shmuel says, discuss Avadim Ayinu, and now we're not, and do what Rav says, discuss who we are now. מתחילה עובדי עבודה זרה, ועכשיו קרבנו המקום לעבודתו, I'm close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean that I'm a Ben Chorin? And when you look at Maggid with these glasses, there is a story happening to you about your own freedom from your own struggles. All of a sudden, it's no longer about trying to relive a story of the past. In the contrary, this is the most practical, relevant conversation your family needs to have today. Ve'achshav. This is the most real conversation your family is desperate for. What does it mean for us today, not only not to be slaves, but to be Bnei Chorin? What is our slavery? What is that which holds us down? And what is it that we can express our cherut with? And now, as we're coming to the Leil Seder, I want to encourage you, each and every single one of you, think in your mind, what does it mean for you to be a Ben Chorin? What is your Mitzrayim? How are you going to convey this message to your family? How are you going to make that the Maggid should not just be a story of the past, but should be a story of the present? Should be a story of Ve'achshav kervanu hamakom la'avodato. It's upon you, it's upon us to create that conversation. So Maggid is no longer a story of the past. Maggid is a story of the present. Pesach kasher v'sameach.